This is the Weltkrieg. We're playing the Eastern Front duration game, linking the Caucasus duration game, the Macedonian duration game, plus Gallipoli, and the Italian duration game. This is the situation at the end of May 1915. Have a quick look at the demoralisation charts here. And we'll start with Germany on 291, Austria on 267, Russia on 510, Bulgaria on 6, Turkey on 41, and Italy on 1. Now, first thing we'll have a look at is the Serbian front. This is where the most activity's taking place. The front's collapsed and the Serbian Montenegrin forces are in desperate retreat. They've managed to sort of avoid being completely encircled, and they've got what passes for a front line now established in the south of the country, but there's no way they're going to be able to hold that. Bulgarians, they've taken only 6 casualties, but you've got to remember Bulgaria can only take 50 demoralisation casualties in the entire game before they give up. They've used up the vast majority of their supply, achieving the breakthrough that they have done. Now, there's quite a lot of Austrian troops in Serbia at the moment, and Serbia and Montenegro. The problem is the Italian front's kicked off. Now, I will be linking the Italian front to the Austrian front starting from next month. So that means I will be able to move units to and from Italy. Whereas I haven't really done that with the Caucasus front. I've sort of got a Caucasus front duration game going, but I've not really linked that at all with the main Eastern Front. It's sort of like almost a separate little thing at the moment. Now I'll have a look at linking that in properly, so we have one big linked game from now on. We look at the situation in Gallipoli. I'll just wander over here to the front on Gallipoli. The British have sort of been gradually building up strength. It's very difficult to get strength built up because you've got these, you can use your 2 landing hexes as 3 capacity ports, but it's very slow, that build up taking place. You've got your naval units here, but you can only use them once a month. The one that's upside down is being used, the other one hasn't been used. So the British have done a couple of attacks, but the last attack was a bit of a disaster. Bringing in more supply, but it's a pretty static front, and the Turks are gradually increasing their strength, mainly from releasing units in these armies here, the 1st and 2nd Army, which are around Istanbul. We look at the Caucasus. Caucasus has been very quiet this month. Both sides are very, very short on supply, and the Turks were doing most of the attacking while the Russians were fairly weak, but the Russians have strengthened their positions recently, and the Turks just didn't fancy trying to launch any suicidal attacks on these mountainous positions. That they really are difficult to attack. So we go over to other fronts. Look at Prussia first. Prussia, nothing's happening at all in Prussia. It's just miles and miles of entrenchment, and these entrenchments actually continue all the way down to the Vistula around Warsaw. The big attacks have been going in here, whereas quite a lot of ground has been made, because the actual front line was along this river at the start of the month. So the Germans have been pushing deeper into Russia. The Russians have been trading ground for time. But the problem with the Germans now is they pretty much run out of supply. And the Russians are no, it's not as strong as the Germans, but they are strong along that frontal area now. So it's going to be difficult to make much progress. If we look at well, I say make progress. It depends on what sort of reinforcements and supplies the Germans can start getting into this area, because I know they will be moving units from the Western Front pretty steadily as time goes on. The Austrians on the Galician Front have actually managed to launch an offensive, quite a decent little offensive as well, but they're against a very, very weak Russian defensive force here. The Russians' trenches were actually overcome with Austrian artillery batteries. Because one thing the Austrians have got is quite a lot of field artillery, which they can use as siege artillery, which they can use as field artillery in 1915. So they've actually sort of broken the siege of Chemistol, which was never a complete siege, but they're now in a position where you can actually get into Chemistol without any great problem. The Russians have made significant withdrawals along this particular front just to stop the Austrians from breaking through. We go past Chemistol, the front is pretty static, with all the way down to the almost to the sort of Romanian border. Admittedly, the Russians are quite deep into Austro-Hungary at this particular point, but it's really only cavalry units operating in that area. Everybody's concentrating along the Galician front here. We go over to the Italian front, which just activated the I've actually moved the Italian front off the wall mounting to put it on the table, so everything's on the table now. All that's happened here is the Italian army has moved from its what would you call it? I don't know, your peacetime deployment into frontal positions, and they've launched an attack across the Isonzo here, which has pushed the Austrians back, because the Austrians aren't particularly strong in this area. They've got quite a few units, but they're way worse than the Italian units. The big advantage they have got is the terrain is absolutely horrendous. It's pretty much all alpine terrain all the way along here. The only decent terrain is in this Isonzo Trieste area. When I say decent, it's not that decent, but it's the area they're going to be making some progress. Now, Austro-Hungary are in a bit of a mess here. They really do need to get more units into this position, and once the game's linked, we'll start pulling units from Serbia, because that's the one area where we can definitely release units. We might be able to release units from Galicia as well, because Central Powers aren't really depending on the Austrians to do the donkey work in the northern part of the front. It's up to the Germans to do all the serious fighting. So that's about it. The war's actually expanded again. Now there's a possibility of expansion when Romania can chip in when the Austro-Hungarians get to a shaken morale. Now, in terms of morale, shaken conditions, Austro-Hungary are quite a way off, about 200 points off, but Russia are less than 100 points away from shaken morale. So anyway, if the Austrian Hungarians get shaken, the Romanians can chip in here. Now the Romanians come in, there are some extra Bulgarian units that appear, which are armies that are keeping an eye on the Romanians and not actually physically active in this game at the moment. We've also got the fact that the Salonika front can activate on turn 2, October 1915. So the war can actually expand again. I would say the situation for the Entente is pretty bad. Serbia and Montenegro have just about had it. I think the big thing about these two armies, though, is they can retreat into Greece. They don't actually get conquered as such. Most nations, if you capture all the cities, they're finished, but Serbia and Montenegro can actually carry on fighting. I know there's some rules restricting what sort of replacements they can bring in, but I'd have to look at that in a bit more detail. Yeah, the pressure on the Russians getting pretty nasty, to be quite honest. That shaken morale, threatening to come along in 1915 is not so good. But that's it so far.